How you guys doing? Long time no see. Tonight we got the big one, the biggest junior featherweight matchup since Marco Antonio Barrera, Eric Morales won. We have Nonito Donaire versus Guillermo Rigondeaux. I waited so long. I actually got a call from a friend of mine out Cali, B-Mac, about this fight. He just asked me, he said, "Where's your pick at?" And I actually waited all night to make my pick because I was watching Rigondeaux last night, and I couldn't believe how good his balance was. I couldn't believe. I knew he was patient, but I couldn't believe the traps that he sets and how he sets them. And he's always in position to counter you with his left hand up underneath or his left hand over the top. It scared me because I originally was picking Nonito. You guys know how I feel about Nonito Donaire. You know, I already think he's a Hall of Famer. The winner of this fight is a Hall of Famer in my opinion. Nonito's probably already done enough to be in the Hall of Fame, but with Rigondeaux's unbelievable amateur pedigree and beating one of the best 5 or 6 fighters of the last 10 or 15 years, I think that, you know, if this fight doesn't put him in the Hall of Fame, his run after this fight will put him in the Hall of Fame, because I don't think anybody else will beat this guy if he beats Nonito. That's how special of a talent that he is. So let me go through the tactical stuff. Rigondeaux's not the tallest guy in the world, but he fights big. He doesn't have to get down and bob and weave. He has the kind of reflexes of a Pernell Whitaker, got Floyd Mayweather, where they're not that tall, but they always can make somebody else come to them, because if you just straight up boxing, you know, no special effects, they're usually the more fluid, usually the more reactive, usually the more skilled guy. Rigondeaux is kind of short, but he fights huge. You know, he always makes you come to him and you come in his wheelhouse. I remember watching one of his fights on HBO and they said that he wasn't a big puncher. I disagree with that. Rigondeaux is just very, very patient in his approach, but he'll knock you out, you know, to the head or the body. That left hand that he shoots up underneath to the liver is death. You know, you got to be very careful running into him. He's not a big jabber, but most of the Cubans aren't. They for some reason, a jab is not a big part of their repertoire, at least the ones in the lighter weights, you know. But he has great presence in the ring. He also has the ability to draw the punches that he wants to draw out of you. You know, that's what he does to the top guys. The guys that are like the B-level guys, he just walks right through them and blows right through those guys. Of course, I don't believe he can blow through Nonito, but anything can happen if somebody gets hit clean. I watched a few of Rigondeaux's fights. I watched his fight with Tion Kennedy. I watched his fight with Cordoba. He struggled in that fight. And I watched his fight with Marquand. Those fights showed me good things and bad things about him. Of course, he's a great counter puncher. Of course, he does a lot of special things. But they also showed me that if you hit him a little bit clean, not in the Kennedy fight, he blew Tion Kennedy out. But if you hit him a little bit clean, he'll shut his offense down a little bit. It also showed me that no matter how special of an athlete you are, no matter how much we can project what you'll do under certain circumstances, the fact that he doesn't have a lot of long, hard 12-round fights where he has to win each round, something does happen to him in the second half of the fight. He doesn't like lose form. He doesn't start huffing and puffing all over the place. But the fact that he hasn't had to concentrate for 36 minutes in a real fight on a continuous basis, it does happen. You know, things do happen to him. In the Cordoba fight, he shut his offense down a little bit. You know, the Marquand fight, he got hurt with a left hook to the temple. You know, although he beat that kid up. To Nonito has the greatest reaction time I've ever seen in my life. From the point that he sees an opening to the point that he can punch with full steam to the opening. I've never seen anything like that. I mean, maybe Ray Robinson and Roy Jones are equal to him, but I mean, it's just amazing. I've never seen anything like that. I mean, when you're open with Nonito, he can hit you with his hardest punch faster than just about anybody I've ever seen. I mean, it's amazing the shots that Nonito can hit you with. He also always comes up big in big fights. Against Darchinian, his first big title fight, he was the underdog. He came up huge. In his unification fight against Montiel, he came up huge. Against Nishioka, the guy that they said was the best guy at 122, I never believed that. I always thought that Rigondeaux would be his biggest challenge at 122. But against Nishioka, Nonito came up big. But I watched Nonito's fight with Omar Narvaez. And you guys shouldn't dismiss that fight as the guy didn't open up and he didn't do this and he didn't do that. Nonito showed the lack of patience in that fight. He showed the lack of creativity. And he showed that he got so impatient that he wasn't willing to work for the knockout. He tried to force the knockout. That was not a good performance by Nonito. Although he's an elite world-class guy and he can get away with stuff like that. Nonito can literally get away with having a bad night and still winning 10 out of 12 rounds against an undefeated type of fighter. But he won't be able to get away with having that lack of patience against Rigondeaux. Nonito lost Victor Conte. He doesn't work with Conte anymore. I don't know how that's going to affect him in his fights. And sometimes, you know, sometimes fighters are like creatures of habit. Sometimes to get your biggest success, you kind of do the same things over and over again. And without Conte, obviously he's not going to be doing the same things over and over again. I am impressed with Nonito's with two of his last three performances. I'm not going to count Arce because Arce's in his wheelhouse. But against the tall South African kid, Jeffrey Mathabula and Nishioka, Nonito kind of got back on track after his fights with Narvaez and the Puerto Rican kid, Vasquez Jr. So I was impressed with those fights. He settled down. He worked a little bit more. I do think Nonito, is as good as his left hand is, I think he doesn't jab enough, and I think he tries to punch a little bit too hard. And when a guy like Rigondeaux, you gotta be very, very careful with that, especially when he's playing defense. After going back and forth last night, I almost pulled the trigger and almost picked Rigondeaux. I almost just said, you know, sometimes karma just has things where, you know, it would be a shame if we didn't realize how great this guy was. You know, kind of like Winky Wright, you know, when he got his first big shot against Shane Mosley. We already knew how great Shane Mosley was, but Winky Wright had to win that fight to get appreciated. And, you know, sometimes fights happen like that, you know, where, like, you know, Evander Holyfield and Mike Tyson, people knew Evander Holyfield was great, but he had to win that fight for people to say, okay, you know. But it's hard for me to go against Nonito. He just seemed to have the ability to hit everybody with his biggest punch. I believe that Rigondeaux is a better natural, pure boxer than Nonito. I believe Rigondeaux will be winning the fight. I believe we will see Nonito hit the canvas from a left hand. But at some point, as their bodies start to glisten a little bit, as, you know, the reflexes get slow to a millisecond, I believe that Nonito will press on. I believe he understands what's going on in this fight. I believe that at some point he'll force Rigondeaux into an exchange. And it's not always who's the better pitcher, it's who's the better catcher. I do believe that Rigondeaux short circuits a little bit. And I believe that Nonito will stop him sometime around the 9th or the 10th round. It may even be controversial. It may even be one of those stoppages where everybody will say Nonito was the A side and they shouldn't have stepped in so fast. But I do think that Donaire will win this fight on a TKO victory and become the unified champion at 122 pounds and move on to greater things. Thanks, guys. You can write me in at thebreadman25@hotmail.com and go on to www.boxingtalk.com. Or, if I'm wrong, I got to live with it. Listen, and let me say this one thing before I leave. Don't bet heavy on this fight because I'm not 100% sure. This guy, Rigondeaux, is super special. He really, really is, man. This guy's a special talent. You know, for boxing purists, he does things. He's not exciting. You know, he's not going to be a rock'em sock'em robot. But for boxing purists, man, you got to appreciate the talent level and the small little things that this guy does about pointing his shoulder, keeping you off of your big shot. He shows you a move, then he takes it back, and then he throws it full steam. He does some beautiful things in there. So if this guy knocks Nonito out, I would not be surprised when he walks him into a big shot. So, you know, I know a lot of you guys ride with me. Don't bet heavy on this fight. Just enjoy it. But my pick is Nonito Donaire, 9th or 10th round, TKO. See you guys later.